is a world beyond the Borderlands. A world forged by wonder and ruled by fate. The battle between these powers has raged since the beginning. Evil and good. Villains and heroes. A vicious cycle, endlessly repeated.
Anyone who played Tiny Tina's assault on Dragon's Keep will be familiar with the tone Gearbox are aiming for with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Before it was rebranded as a Wonderlands one-shot adventure, Dragon's Keep was a piece of DLC for Borderlands 2. While not all post-release content for the franchise has been stellar, Dragon's Keep truly was. It swapped the dusty desert landscapes of Pandora for a world of fantasy and magic, as players indulged in Tiny Tina's tabletop RPG bunkers and badasses. In Wonderlands, the titular Tiny Tina, the world's most dangerous teenage girl, is stranded on a distant world with two bounty hunters, Valentine, played by Brooklyn Nine-Nine's Andy Samberg, and Fret, as well as your nameless character. Their ship has crashed, and to while away the time awaiting rescue, Tina has busted out the B&B board and invited you all to play. As a noob, your character makes a great sounding board for the rules and exposition of the story. Taking the role of Dungeon Master, Tina excels in pulling weird and wonderful scenarios out of thin air and injecting them into play. These might follow standard fantasy templates, or might well be the result of her dropping a snack onto the board that forms a new barrier for the hero. While the formula features all the quintessential Borderlands mechanics, the setting is completely different. This is a fantasy landscape as envisioned by a murderous adolescent girl with as much interest in explosive executions as unicorns and princesses. In the game within the game, an evil entity known as the Dragonlord has returned from exile to wreak havoc on the land. He opposes the rule of Queen Buttstallion, the crystal unicorn that has featured in one incarnation or another since Borderlands 2. Your job, alone or with others, is to travel the land helping NPCs with side quests while hoovering up vast quantities of loot. The critical path will eventually lead you to a confrontation with the Dragonlord, but there's a long way to go to get there. It begins with a character creator that is more in depth than we're used to seeing in a Borderlands game. Here you can adjust hair, eyes, facial features and base armour colours before choosing a class from the half a dozen on offer. In typical franchise style, Wonderlands eschews simple classes like Fighter, Mage or Thief. Instead you have classes like the Clawbringer, a powerful melee fighter that can summon a pet wyvern. Or maybe the Graveborn, a warlock-like spellcaster. The Stabomancer is a stealth-based class, while the Spore Warden uses poison and mushroom-like companion to deal damage over time. While you initially pick just one class, you will eventually be given the option to select another, allowing you access to more skills and abilities, as well as the combat and attribute upgrades that come with it. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is split into two distinct game types. There's the standard FPS, admittedly with some noteworthy changes, and a sprawling overworld map with random encounters, hidden treasures and dozens of points of interest. It becomes something akin to Pathfinder as you control a big-headed version of your player character around the board. There are shrines and campsites, mines and castles, even hub towns and cities. The world of Wonderlands is massive, littered with large, complex, self-contained locations that resemble more traditional Borderlands FPS maps. You'll tangle with goblins, dragons, ogres, trolls, bandits, zombies and skellimans among other things. Loot falls thick and fast, showering you with guns and crossbows, swords, axes, daggers and hammers. Shields are now called wards, and you'll find armour, rings and amulets to complement your build. Perhaps the biggest change is that standard grenades are replaced by devastating spells. You can conjure fireballs or eruptions of energy from the ground. You can channel deadly poison, freeze your enemies or summon dive bombing wyverns. All loot, particularly the weaponry, is heavily randomised. Spells and guns have specific classes. The weapon manufacturers return along with some new ones which give you a rough indication of their behaviour in the field. Machine guns, handguns, snipers and shotguns make a return, allowing you to mix and match your gear to your heart's content. It's especially useful in the Chaos Chamber endgame, which I won't talk too much about other than to say it's all about the dungeon crawling and the looting. Although Borderlands' brand of comedy has seen diminishing returns for a while, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands injects some fresh humour into the narrative. Valentine and Fret have some enjoyable banter that manages to remain amusing throughout, while Ashley Birch's Tina is her usual live wire self. If, like me, you get a kick out of hearing her ramble on about nothing in particular, you'll be right at home here. The Dragonlord reminds me most of Handsome Jack, chiming in with a bored yet mildly psychotic tone to belittle and cajole you. Now and then it all goes incredibly meta too, with the Dragonlord seeming to control events in the game without Tina's say-so. Of course, Tina, like most Borderlands characters, tends to dangle her legs on the wrong side of the sanity fence. Old characters like Torg feature sparsely in the story, alongside new allies like the gender-fluid paladin Mike. As the story takes an occasional dark turn, we're reminded that the Borderlands writers do have the chops to get serious. Shooting feels tighter than ever before too, with more precision and more options for causing destruction. Yes, the formula is largely unchanged, but the variety of new enemies, spells, abilities and locales makes for shootouts and encounters that feel fresh and dynamic. The class diversity helps greatly, allowing you to build in interesting ways within a malleable framework. Any complaints are kind of par for the course. I'm not excusing certain annoyances like tanky enemies, glitches, or the fact that some of it is overwritten to the point of irritation, but these things are as much a part of the Borderlands formula as the 87 bazillion guns. Your mileage with certain things will vary. Wonderlands is not particularly janky, but there are bugs here and there. I played a review build, which means glitches I saw might be patched out come launch. As a result, it's hard to comment on them in detail when they could be fixed later. Regarding the writing though, I'm a fan of the humour, so more tolerable than some of you might be. It's unlikely that Wonderlands will win over any new fans. Despite some significant additions, it's still very much a Borderlands game. It looks great in places, and the shooting, looting and levelling is just as enjoyable and impactful as it ever was. As you adventure through ancient forts, forbidding forests and occasionally beautiful sun-drenched fields, the narrative continues to surprise in ways only Borderlands can. A prime example is when you need a boat to get across the sea, and Torg comes up with a pretty unique solution to the problem. I won't spoil it, but it made me laugh out loud. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is more than just Borderlands with a new skin though. The addition of proper melee weapons, spells, unique classes and the overworld map are enough to set it apart from the rest of the franchise. The change of setting, new customization options including skins and colours, features and materials, and challenging bosses make exploration feel rewarding. Alone or in a group, Wonderlands is an irreverent slice of frantic fun. It's wonderfully mayhemic, brimming with cathartic gameplay, fountains of loot and colourful things to smash, blast and explode. Does it do anything revolutionary? Well, that's a matter of opinion, but it certainly brings enough changes to the established formula to make it an absolute must-have for fans of the franchise as a whole, and for that reason I'm going to score it a 9 out of 10.
I do love my stuff.
Hi there, Mick Fraser here. Hope you enjoyed my review of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands from Gearbox Software and 2K Games. If you did like the review, please hit like and subscribe, maybe tag that bell icon too, so you're kept up to date with everything we post going forward. And do chime in the comments if you're planning to pick this one up. Let us know what you think of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and Borderlands as a whole. In the meantime, I've been Mick Fraser for God is a Geek, and you guys have been lovely. Bye.